Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, my precious pack, and welcome back once more to VEGA Conflict. Today's video is going to be for the returning players, and this is going to be the first of 3 videos today. And this is going to be to just help catch you up on what is currently going on in the game. Not lore-wise, but technology-wise. So, let's say that the last thing you had was Xenodivision. Well, let's go ahead and let's drop into the blueprints for a moment and take a look at what you're going to be stepping into. So the last thing you would have had would have been the suppressor to the Punisher cruiser, these 5 ships right here. The next tier up from you is going to have the Paladin carrier, the Pegasus, the Liberator destroyer, the Enforcer battleship, the Vindicator cutter, and the Guardian cruiser. With the step up you make into the Axis faction, you also make the step up to be able to begin obtaining harmonic technology. Harmonic technology is actually fairly simple in what it provides. Let's take the Liberator Destroyer for example. And then I will show this off in fleet so you can see what it does. It provides 2 harmonic siege by default. The battleship provides 2 harmonic warfare by default. The cutter provides agility, and the cruiser provides shields. Now, what these do is actually fairly straightforward, and you have a tab here called Bonuses under your Fleet Manager. Click this, and it will bring you up to this page here. And this will show you exactly what those harmonic benefits do. In this case, I have a 5% agility increase. If I click More Info, I can see exactly what is providing the bonuses. It's late naturally, and I've got a lot to record, so there may not be gameplay for this video, but it will be fairly straightforward. Next up is Harmonic Warfare, and it says build Axis ships and use components with Harmonic Warfare to increase the bonus. Right now my fleet has a 25% increased damage value to ships, and this is something to think about when you're building your fleets up around harmonics. Harmonic Siege increases your damage against modules, whereas Harmonic Warfare increases your damage against ships specifically. Harmonic Agility increases your agility naturally by up to 30%, and this is increasing forward speed, rotation speed, and strafe speed if I'm not mistaken. If not, someone can correct me in the comment section below. The other bonuses are for shields, and there's very little that they actually do, and right now I'm going to use the Harvester as an example because I have 4 shields equipped. So I have a maximum shield health increase of 3.33% at the beginning of combat, and naturally it's going to remain that way. However, if I were to use Guardian cruisers in this fleet with it, that value would actually increase based on how many I equip with the fleet. So let's go ahead and let's just take a bunch of them. Because each one provides a bonus value of 2. And each of the shields they equip provides an additional bonus value. So now the value for the maximum shields is going to be 18.33. And that value is applied in combat. So you don't see an increase here, but it will be applied in combat. That is how harmonics work. They're applied in combat. Next tier up from the Axis and harmonics, we're going to introduce you to the first tier 7 faction that was introduced after we talked a minute about Marauders. Marauders are essentially PvP specific duplicates of PvE ships. They do void damage, which is unblockable by anything other than PvP ships. They have lower repair times in comparison. In most cases, they're actually 2/3 their repair value, or less, than that of their equal ship. So in this case, Liberator Destroyer to Dragoon Destroyer, you can see the vast change of repair time. And this allows certain builds to be used defensively and things like that. And the PvP ships I may have to make a more dedicated video for, but that is essentially exactly what they're made for. They're made for player versus player combat, because that's where they're proficient. Because to prevent them from being used in PvE, most targets have an extremely high resistance to any and all void damage. Okay, time to introduce you to the first of the Tier 7 factions, and that will be the Altarians. What do the Altarians bring to the board? Well, nothing in specific, because they introduced overdrives. However, after they introduced overdrives, they were essentially brought to each and every single ship, whereas the other factions just added to what was already there. The later variants of the Altarians have built-in shield regeneration on their ships, such as the Zeus, right here, with a shield recharge rate of 2% per second, along with, when it takes damage, that is increased by 3%. At max, it's 9% in total, because it's 5 through here and 4 through smite, or it's 4 through here and 5 through smite, but either way, the total is 9% of regeneration per second. Now, not all Altarian ships have this. This is just one of the newer ones of the two that were introduced during the RPS phase. The Bastion, Cavalier, Sovereign, Inquisitor, and Paragon are all pre-RPS. And the RPS system is a rock, paper, scissors system that was implemented, although it is heavily fragmented and favors the actual top tier, which is going to be the final one we talk about. So in turn, there isn't much going for the Altarians, and you'll want to advance into one of the other two factions as quickly as possible, because in all honesty, they have the superior assets. On to Umbra. These are an interesting ship class all their own. In PvE, they can be exceptional. In PvP, they're primarily great for basing, because with them comes the introduction of ablative armor. They do not have shields, they do not have shells, they do not have screens. They have ablative armor. And what happens is, after you equip ablative armor on a ship and they do a set amount of damage, they will receive ablative armor back, bringing the value back up to the maximum value that is applied at the beginning of combat. So if you equip armor with 9,600 ablative armor, that is going to be your value at the beginning of combat, so long as your ship is not damaged. And only 10% of damage can bypass ablative armor at the current time with the current meta of the game. And naturally, they're going to be the counter of Altarians. So they have built-in shield bypass and built-in 20% increased damage versus Altarian targets. And then you have the more specific class damage, so cruisers against cutters, and they don't do anything against frigates though, because the only faction that actually has a frigate is Umbra, and it was actually their kickstart to actually allow them, well, to debut them. Though the Phoenix isn't quite a Umbra ship in my eyes, because it lacks the thing that makes Umbra Umbra, and that is ablative armor and ablative regeneration. But that does not mean that it is not a decent ship. It is great at hunting carriers, and it only gets better through the mark upgrades. And unlike all other ships on this list, or other than PvP ships, as it is mark upgraded, it gets increased armor health per point. And it can become much more tanky than a cruiser, but again, you're taking direct armor damage, and it's a direct repair value that you just can't negate. And most armor and repair values at the higher level are over an hour by default, so it's not really advised to use the Phoenix unless it's for specific cases. And in this case, it actually has a fairly interesting increased number of values. Unlike all of its other Umbra counterparts, it actually does increase shield damage instead of increased bypass or built-in bypass. It still has the 20% increased Altarian damage, but it has a unique overdrive. That is the Blood Hunt. Blood Hunt further increases damage versus carriers, and this is how it works. Drawing on the energies from being inside an opponent's carrier field sends the ship into hunting mode. Now this is extremely good, especially if you're going up against lower tier targets. So if you're using this to hunt, say, Axis targets with Paladin carriers with their fields, it is ideal for hunting them. Because one, it gains extremely heavy shield bypass of 50%. It gets 20% increased damage, and it also gains damage resistance. And this damage resistance against all damage types that are in the game at its current existence. That was Void, which no other PvE ship can resist, Plasma, Alien, and this is another thing to bring up. This value right here actually breaks the RPS meta, but again, it's not true Umbra. So I can see it having that resistance being balanced. It has increased alien resistance, and all of these values apply over the default values. And then you have increased ship speed, turning speed, and strafe speed, and 50%, 50%, 50%. That's all great values because it can run carriers down extremely easily at that point. And it carries, if I'm not mistaken, 5 weapon slots at Mark 6. So let's just go ahead and let's just pop back up here for a minute. Indeed, Mark 5 and Mark 6, it has 5 weapon slots, 3 armor slots, 4 special slots, and 1 resistor slot. Now, as you can see at the bottom in the stats, it is extremely healthy, but this isn't even the farthest it can go. If I had equipped level 3 Thonian armor on that value would be over 40,000, pushing towards 50,000. That's tier 6.5 Dreadnought levels of health on a frigate with under 4 hours of repair time. So in some cases it might be fun to use it just because of how powerful it is, but another thing is 50% increased carrier damage, 35% increased health damage, 50% reduced weight, weapon mass, 50% resistance to both alien and blight damage types, counter chain, 100% resistance to both alien nebulas and blight nebulas, and if we take a look at the resistances here, it's now 30% across the board. So if I'm not mistaken, if it's not cumulative to the current value, but it is additive, then that means that you're going to have 80% resistance against alien and 30% resistance against everything else. And that value is applied directly to the health. So in this case, you've got 80% resistance against alien damage. You would increase this value by 80%, and that'd be your effective health. Pretty tanky ship, right? Nice. But let's go ahead and let's move on from the Umbral ships into the newest and the baddest, the Pharmacon. They have a ship so broken that it defies the RPS meta, and it is the current top tier ship at the time of this recording for PvE farming and PvP, though it does require some skill to fly. It is an impressive ship, and its name is the Daemon, and it represents the Pharmacon. It has the ability to enter phase, which is a state that they cannot be damaged in. While in phase, you cannot damage at the current time any of the Pharmacon ships. You cannot target them. They become difficult to see unless you have played other RTS games and you're used to looking for the shimmer of invisible units such as StarCraft 2 or StarCraft or any other game that actually uses a similar invisibility feature. Then you'll have no problem paying close attention to where they're going. You'll be able to bring your guns to bear while they're moving around thinking they have the advantage. But in this case, you can also time everything in the game due to weapon travel time, round travel time, to the destination, and you can dump an entire load of heavy ordnance on an enemy and interface before they have a chance to actually retaliate or before their rounds have a chance to hit you, just by simply timing when you attack. And that can result in you taking absolutely no damage for a fight. That about covers each of the factions. Now to another large point that I think a lot of you will like. starting to lose my voice here for a minute. And I did bring up Dreadnoughts, so let's go ahead and let's talk about Dreadnoughts for a moment. Because currently we have 2 in the game with a 3rd one on the way that I will be talking about later today, which is the Orator. But the current 2 that we can farm are the Segfault Dreadnought, and the Behemoth Dreadnought. I've made a full tutorial to farm the Behemoth already on the channel, up to Mark 6. I don't think I'll do the same with the Segfault for the time being, because I'm still farming the targets. But this is basically what you're going to get at the end of those grinds. This is a single ship. This is a Dreadnought. Dreadnoughts have twin firing arcs for each of the Dreadnoughts, with the exception of the Harvester, because it isn't actually classed as a Dreadnought. It has no class, but I'll explain that in another video specifically for the Harvester. But your introduction to Dreadnoughts brings you with the Behemoth, with 200,000 hit points with a good armor fitting, 11,000 damage per second, which a proportion of that is actually doubled due to the twin fire arcs overlapping in the front of the ship, making it ideal to rush the targets down. They have a fleet cargo capacity, a carry capacity, that is unrivaled. At Mark 6, they can move just as quickly as any other Mark 6 ship in the game, at the maximum 390 astronomical units per hour. They do not have an absurdly long repair time, making them extremely efficient with the health that they have. And even if you fully lose a Dreadnought at Mark Elite, you won't have to worry too much about it, because unlike with something like a top tier fleet that I'm currently using to farm Segfault, they're not going to be over 30 hours of repair time. They're actually going to be hardly a third of that, hardly a fourth of that at that. They have such uses that no matter how you play with them, you're always going to find some way to use them. This is the Umbra Dreadnought, the Behemoth. And its fleet defense is actually ablative armor. It has 40,000 for my current fitting. A portion of the health is being brought by Fleet Commander Victoria Onan, which I'll also talk about in another video for everyone. Probably a part 2, most likely tomorrow, along with the concept idea I've come up with for this week. Other than that, the Dreadnoughts are fairly simple. They're brutal ships that are extremely efficient at what they do. The other Dreadnought that we can currently obtain is the Segfault Dreadnought. Not as healthy, but it has something different. It has the ability to phase just like every other Pharmacon ship. So you time everything, you can hit your enemy, stasis them, and you can decimate them without them ever having a chance to fire back. Because again, this is a Dreadnought vessel. They hit hard, and they have plenty of health, armor, and other values to back them up. Mine is still currently being upgraded, and it's going to be a little while before I actually have the Mark 6. But each of the Dreadnoughts has a very unique use in the game, the Behemoth being a great tanking ship. The Segfault being more of a stealth fighter, that it appears out of thin air and just pummels the enemy. And the Orator, in its current fitting that we've had leaked and stuff to us that we know about, it's going to have more of a traditional carrier role, but it's going to be a Dreadnought, so essentially it's going to be a Dreadnought carrier. And again, I'll talk about it further in the video later to further elaborate what I mean. And I'll also go over the current stats on the live server and everything like that. That's it. Well, not quite. Final thing to cover for all returning players is the introduction of Fleet Commanders. These are commanders that are obtainable for the first 3 via missions awarded through your missions tab. The rest of the Fleet Commanders are earned through grinding them out in events such as the Decimation that will actually be running later today, which I'll be talking about again in another video later. But what fleet commanders do is they actually provide damage bonuses, health bonuses, in some cases movement speed bonuses, and other things like that for your fleet. In this case, Miss Tatiana Demina, at max rank, gives fleets an additional 7,120 hit points, and this isn't split across the ships, this is per ship. So, if you have a single ship with one shield on each ship, then each one can be given that 7,120 base value increase. So each ship goes from a 1-point shield to a 7,121 point shield. She also boosts cannon weapon damage per second, and cannons are a specific weapon type that was introduced with the Xeno division, for the cruisers specifically. She also boosts shield energy and health damage, and each commander has a unique set of bonuses, such as in the case of Victoria Onin, she boosts health, missile weapon speed, gives alien resistance, gives area of effect radius, an increase of 30%, and if you actually, this is another thing I forgot to bring up, if you compose your fleets of exactly what it says here, in this case use 6 Umbra faction hulls, you'll gain another bonus, and in this case it's blight damage. That about sums it all up. I hope that all the returning players found this useful. For each of you that have more questions, most definitely ask in the comment section. I'll reply as quickly as I can to you, or in a timely, orderly manner while I'm probably not sleeping. But that's going to be it, everybody. Tired. Need a drink too. Okay. Be safe out in the void, everybody, and as always, I will see you in the next video.